Episode 3. Castle Carhold. The young Ned Umber sits scared in a hall. A messenger enters the hall and asks in panic, "Me lord, please. We can't wait any longer. No one is coming for us. The north has fallen. We have to leave." Ned Umber says anxiously King John will come. He has a plan. The messenger despairs and becomes angry. He roars King John could already be dead. Horn bursts sound and everyone reacts shocked. The army of the dead mauls at Castle Carhold. A white walker is on a dead horse and leads them. Ned Umber looks out of a window and says it's too late. "I'm so sorry. I thought John would." He stops and sees his men running away. John and his allies arrive on the eastern coast of the Vale. Way to the Eyrie can be seen. John sees Yara's ships and says they're waiting for the Greyjoy. Sam goes to John and says, "I'm sorry about your brother. He had visions and could see so much." John says maybe he even saw Cersei blowing up the September of Baelor. Sam smiles playfully and says, "Well, everybody has heard of the September." He smiles again and John says she has blown up all her enemies and her slaves chase us. The Night King conquered the north in one fell swoop, killed 2 of my siblings and too many Northmen, and now he's chasing us no matter what we do, no matter where we flee. We have enemies everywhere. Sam says, "I only hope he has not seen all the human mistakes before he." John says if he had seen everything, maybe he did not wanted to help us anymore. Yara arrives with allies and joins Dany again. John asks Yara where Theon is. She says he fell in battle. Tyrion says so in the end he got his just punishment. John says angrily to Tyrion, "He betrayed his family just as you did, but he made peace with it, with the Starks and the Greyjoy." Bran stands next to Tyrion with his hand on his sword. Dany settles the conflict. Tyrion has done exactly the same. Everybody heads up the path. Bran reminds Tyrion of the forest folk that almost killed her after Bran rescued Tyrion. Tyrion says, "Without me, the forest people would have killed you." Tyrion thinks and Bran says, "Well, your father actually saved us by equipping these savages." Tyrion says, "Of course, the woods." He goes to Daenerys and says, "Your Grace, I've been in contact with a small army I have helped to arms. I can persuade them to join us." Dany says he has to take a lot of escort with him. Tyrion leaves the path with Bran and some soldiers. Dany tells John that she is pregnant. John is happy despite his grief. He says, "You mean that would not be possible?" Dany says, "You said." John interrupts her by hugging her. Dany encourages John that Arya is safe as long as they stop the Night King. Arya travels with the Hound across the King's Road to King's Landing. Nymeria and her pack of wolves are in the woods with them. Hound says, "Are these bastards following us all the way to the capital?" Arya says, "Maybe." They ride through a snowy forest and arrive at the inn on the crossroads. Hound sees the abandoned inn and says, "We know what it looks like when people loot in wars. And now the end of the damn world is coming." Arya stops and sees something. She gets off the horse. Hound notices that and says, "There's nothing to get here. If you're smart enough, you'll be chopped off with your own supplies." As soon as the news of the fall of the wall arrived, Arya sees the corpse of a fat boy. She says the chaos must have started immediately when the news arrived. Or the looters came first. Hound sees the dead boy and says either way. Did not help the dumb fat cunt either. Look at him. Razor still in front of the inn. No boots and remnants of a bag. He was definitely robed. Could not get away fast enough. Arya says, do you know about killing fat defenseless boys? Hound is surprised. He says we should bury him or go on riding. But there's nothing here for us. Arya says you should burn him. Hound reacts angrily and says, are you kidding me? Arya says, a strong man who kills children but is afraid of fire. You deserve your title. The Hound says, fuck you. Arya says, I just want to annoy you. We continue riding. Arya and Hound ride in the forest from the King's Road. Hound asks how Arya wants to control Cersei if she's a traitor. Arya answers she kills Cersei and then takes her place. Hound says, what, in 7? Fine. They arrive at a cave. Hound says, this is the cave of Beric and the other deserters. You really want to annoy me? Arya says, I remember hearing that you deserted from the Battle of Blackwater Bay. You are not better. Commander of the Golden Company is getting ready to head south. Commander goes to Jaime's cell in Moat Cailin. He asks Jaime how he is doing. Jaime answers he's getting used to getting trapped near the north. Commander asks Jaime why the armies in the north have fled and what is coming from the north. Jaime says there's a power that we cannot stop that way. Only if we do not stab each other in the back as Cersei ordered. Commander says that the famous regicide is the best example of the Westeros people. No one can trust someone and an oath is worth a shit here. Jaime says that he only has to trust one man. The king in the north, Jon Snow. He always keeps his word and therefore avoids even swearing oaths that he knows he cannot hold. The commander thinks and asks Jaime what he would do. Jaime says he would support King Jon, but he still has something to do. Commander smiles a bit. The commander lets his soldiers take Jaime with him and orders that all travel south towards Harrenhal. There they will surely cross King Jon's path. Euron arrives with his fleet in King's Landing at Mudgate. Euron and Cersei are in the throne room and talk about Jaime being captured, but have greatly weakened the Lannisters' troops. Cersei gets angry by this betrayal and yells at Euron. Euron insists on talking about it alone. Both go into a room. Euron looks at the mountain, tells him, I'm technically the king. Just wait outside, the king and the queen have to talk. Euron goes into the room and closes the door in front of the mountain. Euron makes fun of Cersei, grabs her and says, if I do not get a wedding for my loyalty, then can I have you? Euron rapes Cersei. The mountain storms in and throws Euron from Cersei. Mount pulls sword, but Cersei yells stop. Euron is too important for that. Cersei falls silent and trembles. Euron gets up and says, I'm the king now. The mountain goes back a bit. Cersei trembles on the floor and whispers anxiously, my king. Tyrion finds with Bran the leaders of the forest people and persuades them to help in the battle. Bran with Night King in vision. Robert is shown as a young soldier. Bran tries to learn something about the Night King's thoughts, but can only get a glimpse of Harrenhal. Vision changes again. Rhaegar vs. Robert at Trident with Rhaegar's death. Bran sees all the soldiers fall on Rhaegar's fallen body and he is trampled down while dying. Bran realizes what the Night King wants to tell him and talks to him the whole time. You show me how people are fighting each other. How they betrayed each other. Do you see people like that? As traitors. The Night King looks at Bran again. Bran asks him, you were a human being yourself, why have you turned against them? Bran looks at the many soldiers who are now over Rhaegar's body to steal rubies from his armor. Bran says, sometimes it looks like you are right, that's true. But we can be better. We can hold together. If the people of Westeros cannot do that, everything is lost. That's why we will do it. Because there is no other option. Night King looks at Bran, who is again trying to see something of the Night King in another vision. Night King touches Bran's arm again, he begins to steam. Bran shows no reaction, he calmly looks at the Night King and says, I'm not Bran Stark anymore, I'm much more now. The Night King lets go. Tyrion and Bran go back to Uri. They talk about Jaime. In doing so, Bran reveals to Tyrion what sort of offer Jaime made him to support him. Bran says a castle and one pretty wife. I think I should settle for that. Tyrion smiles. Bran asks him why he does not drink wine. Tyrion replies, since I'm back in Westeros I drink less. Tyrion denigrates Jon at the Lords present in individual secret meetings. He notices that Sam still does not know that Daenerys killed Sam's father and brother. Varys shows slight distrust of Tyrion as he keeps his talks with the Lords so secretive. Sam is in the air and walks with Gilly and her son. Sam says, Gilly, I have a problem. I know something that Jon should know. But I'm afraid this information could destroy the relationship with Daenerys. Gilly looks puzzled and says, you're talking so strange again. Sam says, on the one hand, I know I have to tell him. Gilly says, I learn a lot by reading, but you, Sam says, on the other hand, he's finally happy and he deserves it. Gilly says, I don't really understand, but if you hurt somebody with it, you should not say it. You also lied about my son, so it's the same here, right? It is then something good. Or is that so bad? Sam says, well, it's a big thing. But Sam looks pleased and says, I'll tell him when this is over. Jon prepares defense in the Vale against the army of the dead. Jorah and Grey Worm help out in planning the battle. They want to use the narrow mountain trails to use the overwhelming number of opponents against them, so that the dead will block each other and attack only from the front. Meera Reed and Howland Reed leave their own castle with troops and set off to the south to gather with Jon and his allies. Howland says that they take the King's Road. Edmure Tully's wife tries to persuade Edmure to help in the war, and after learning that Jaime has been captured in the fight against the Golden Company, he should also free Jaime. Edmure's wife says wistfully, I'm sorry, but I had to ask for help. The Blackfish enters the room. Edmure looks at him and says, will you make me down again, or will you finally show me some gratefulness? I have had your dead proclaimed and hidden you in your home. Blackfish says, and I'm grateful for that. You found a solution where no one died. Even if it was the Kingslayer. But at least you are not a complete disappointment. Now call the banners and fight for our family. Edmure agrees and sends Maester to send ravens. Dany and Jon go to their bedroom. Dany asks Jon why they don't face the enemy and why they are here in the Eyrie. Jon says, Bran had visions, and the Night King could follow him in a vision. Maybe he could see things like Bran, then he'll see and attack us, too, so we'll wait. Dany asks Jon how he feels about it. Jon says, I think when you came to help us behind the wall, he did not surround us without reason. I think he knew you were coming. Dany gets sad and says, if that's true, the Night King has surrounded you with such a big army just for me. Without me, Jon interrupts her and says, no, Daenerys, that's not your fault, it was mine. I should not have commanded anyone behind the wall anymore. Dany says, you led them, they followed you because they wanted to. But I could not keep anyone at my side in the Seven Kingdoms. I lost them all in the war. Jon says, you've never lost me, and I rule over more than half of Westeros. He smiles at her. Dany says, it does not change anything. Without me, the wall might still stand. Jon says, that's just a guess. Dany says, the last time the White Walkers came to Westeros was over 1,000 years ago, and now that I have my children, they come back again. Jon wants to interrupt her. Dany says, what if it's true? What if they just came back to steal my children? Without me, Jon roars, without you, I'd be dead. Either through the Night King behind the wall or meeting with Cersei, you saved me. Dany says, and you not only gave me the North, but a child. She holds her stomach and Jon approaches her. She says, my first child died before I could see it, and shortly afterwards my husband died. Jon holds her hand and says, our child will not die, I will not die. He smiles briefly and says, I want to take care of our child, and that's only possible when we win this war. Dany says, if we win, what will happen next? My hand kept pointing out to me that I needed a successor if I die. Jon smiles at her and says, you're not going to die, I still need you, but once you're on the Iron Throne, our kid should become the rightful heir to the throne. Dany says, it looks like our kid is going to be. Jon says, a bastard, like me, unless. Jon holds Dany's hands. Dany says, unless we marry. Jon smiles at her and says, let's get married while there's still time. They kiss. Bran realizes the looks from Sora to Podrick. Bran says to Podrick, you have to get here before we're all dead. Podrick denies it. Bran says, according to the horse from King's Landing, you're more than well prepared. Podrick says, good. He talks to her, but she is just flirting. Podrick is surprised when she leaves. Bran appears impressed and says, not bad for the start. Podrick says, do it better. Bran says, with fighting you have your problems, but you can handle women. And you idiot do not even notice. Podrick says, I don't understand. I have not achieved anything at all. Bran says, the women you do not pay for have to be conquered like a castle. Step by step. You have not cracked the walls yet, but you could say you've got yourself in a perfect position. Podrick is astonished and asks, really? And what now? Bran says, oh boy, do I really have to explain everything to you? Brian rides with Tormund along the King's Road to the south. Tormund talks to Brian about Sansa's death and compares it to Ygritte. Brian is pissed about the talking point at first, but Tormund tells her that there are things she should just forget and other things she have to accept because they'll kill you otherwise. Brian looks at him stunned. Both ride further and notice that an army is approaching from the north. They wait and see the soldiers of Howland Reed. Brian and Tormund ride to Howland Reed, and after a welcome they ride with them. Meera talks to Brian about how they both protected the Starks, Bran and Sansa. Meera says they both failed, but the war for life continues. Jon and Dany get married so that their child will not be a bastard. Sam holds the wedding as an aspiring maester. Jon and Dany then go into a bedroom and complete the marriage, where Jon can already see the pregnancy on the belly. Tyrion let know Sam that Daenerys executed Sam's father and brother. Sam wants to confront Dany and gets into conflict with Jon. He roars to all the lords that Jon married a murderess and Jon himself is a Targaryen. Sam reveals Jon's true name to everyone and says that one day his child may become a mad king. Lord Royce reacts in horror and asks, why should Eddard Stark bring a Targaryen to Winterfell and raise him like a son of his own? Sam replies that Eddard's sister Lyanna Stark is the mother, and Rhaegar and Lyanna even got married. Dany looks at Jon in shock. Lyanna Mormont defends Jon because he has always acted like his foster lord Eddard. Sam says that he travels to the rest of his family. Varys realizes that Tyrion is behind all this and even asks him if he knows where Sam got the information from, that Dany had executed Rendil and Daikon Tali. Tyrion says he does not know. Varys looks at him with relief. Varys writes a letter in a dark room and gives it to Maester. Jon sees Sam riding away with Gilly and her son. Daenerys goes to Jon and she asks him what's going on here. Why are all the allies leaving since they separate in Winterfell? Lannisters, Greyjoy and now the Tarlys. Jon says that's Dany's fault. Although she may be better than Cersei, yet she simply executed her enemies, even though they only obeyed orders, she had already surrendered. Dany becomes more serious and says that she gave them a choice and they decided to die. Jon asks her why she did not listen to her advisors. Tyrion, Varys or Missandei must have tried to bring her to a good decision. Dany gets angry and asks a good decision. I'm still the rightful ruler. Jon says, no, if it's true what Sam said, then I have the higher claim to the throne. Dany freezes. Jon wants to say something but stops. He hears Bran's voice and tells him he must go to the Eyes of the Gods. The Night King wants something there. Bran with Night King in vision. Night King as a young man who meets with children of the forest on Island of Faces. It's snowing strong. He is referred to as Azor Ahai, and a peace deal is sealed with blood on Dragonglass dagger. The blood runs from the blade to a seed that lies on the grass. Bran notes that the dagger was connected to the seed by this sort of blood ritual. Bran says that this seed becomes a weirwood tree. This can strengthen Bran's powers. He asks the Night King if the blood ritual has been strengthened. Bran sees the children of the forest bury the bloody seed. Bran says he lays down a curse that activates with the introduction of the dagger. Then they bury a seed together with the bloody Dragonglass dagger. Bran realizes that the Night King has also been betrayed. He asks the Night King if he knew that they wanted to make him a weapon. The Night King does not answer. It's night. Dany says she feels something, a kind of foreboding that something is about to happen. Jon thinks the enemy is coming and says everyone should go to their posts. Jon tells Dany and all the other lords in the room that he heard Bran in a kind of vision. Bran wants us to travel to the Eye of the Gods. The Night King wants to go there. The soldiers slowly search the narrow mountain trails in the darkness. Blue glowing eyes shine out of the darkness and approach faster. The battle begins. Archers look for Ice Dragon, no one to see. Dany wants to ride on Drogon but Missandei stops her by remembering her about the pregnancy. Jon fights higher and is happy that the plan works. Daenerys begins to stare absently at a wall in the throne room. Missandei notices this and asks Dany, is everything all right, Your Grace? Dany says oh no. Bran sees White Walkers sneaking from the sides behind the front line. Bran calls to Jon and he notices the White Walkers. Jon acts against it. The army of the dead is hardly progressing. Jon and his people fall back a bit, but are clearly in the advantage. The Ice Dragon flies down from above. Dany looks serious at the ceiling. She says Dracarys. The Ice Dragon spits fire in the narrow mountain trails. Drogon lands at Jon and spits his fire against the flames of the Ice Dragon into the narrow mountain trail. Rhaegal lands nearby and attacks the dead. Drogon flies up and fights the Ice Dragon. Bran sees this fight and shouts, I think that's better than this huge crossbow. Jon realizes that Drogon is having trouble. Jon is getting on Rhaegal. Jorah and Grey Worm are holding the front together. Bran is heading for a White Walker at the side. Jorah is fighting and notices Bran's action as he calls and throws him a dragon glass dagger to fight the White Walker, but he cannot kill him. Ghost jumps in front of Bran and helps him fall back. Jon struggles in the sky against the Ice Dragon with the Night King. Drogon helps on the ground. After fighting in the sky, the Ice Dragon bites Rhaegal in his throat. Jon falls with him to the mountain. Jon manages to keep to a mountain trail, Rhaegal rolls further down. Drogon roars and manages to hit the battered Ice Dragon with his fire to stop most of it, but something is burning the Ice Dragon. This fire goes out shortly thereafter. Jon is rescued by Podrick. With him he realizes that this is not a normal wight. Robin Arryn is in the throne room with Dany, Missandei, Tyrion, Varys, Podrick, Lord Royce, and Lyanna Mormont. Yara comes and says that it does not look good and that they should clear away before they are all encircled here. Some talk about next step in the battle. Lord Royce proposes to flee and leave for Harrenhal. Dany agrees. Tyrion says he does not trust in magic and visions. He prefers to travel directly to King's Landing. Lyanna Mormont says she also does not believe in visions, but after all that has happened in the last few months, she now even believes that the new gods really exist. But she believes above all in King Jon, Aegon Targaryen or whatever his name is. Robin Arryn roars that the Eyrie is safe and no one is allowed to run away. Everyone ignores him and agree with Yara because of the bad situation. They go with her. Lord Royce goes to Robin Arryn and tries to reason with him. As he roars, Tyrion knocks him down with a shield and says, "I've always hated that boy." Lord Royce takes Robin Arryn unconscious over his shoulder and follows the others out of the hall. Drogon, Jon, Ghost, Bran and Jorah are fighting together to free the way. Grey Worm is killed by a White Walker in front of Missandei. Yara leads the escape from the mountain. The Ice Dragon attacks the Eyrie and lets it collapse. All survivors escape from the mountains and flee safely to their fleets on the eastern coast. The Hwyrchts jump in pursuit of the cliffs and continues running after the impact. Yara roars that they should travel through the Crab Bay to the Trident and from there across the country to Harrenhal. Jon and Gendry turn back to burn Rorigal's body. Gendry says his father killed Jon's father. It would only be fair if the bastard of the murderer sacrifices himself for the victim's bastard. Jon answers that he probably never was a bastard, but he only knows it that way. Gendry sees the Ice Dragon flying around the Eyrie in the sky and says to Jon, "It does not matter anymore. Whether rightful heir or bastard. You are the leader now. Do me a favor and protect Arya, she was like a family to me. Maybe the only good thing in my life." Gendry runs with his torch to Rorigal. Whites pursue Gendry and Ice Dragon lands near Rorigal. Gendry fights some whites. He runs to Rorigal with the torch. Nighting lands near to Rorigal. He sees Gendry. Gendry throws torch on Rhaegal and he starts to burn slowly. Jon keeps going in the direction of his allies. While walking, he sees Bran. Jon is startled and stops. He looks at Bran scared and asks if he is real. Bran says, "You have to break his curse. He only fulfills the purpose for which he was created." Jon looks at him in confusion. Bran disappears and Jon looks back seeing the fire continue to burn. Jon continues to run to his allies. Night King hears Bran's voice and looks distracted. Gendry is shaking in fear. The fire on Rorigal is spreading slowly. Night King looks at Gendry and walks up to him. Gendry remains frozen in fear. He wants to say something. Night King throws his sword like a spear into Gendry's chest. He got smashed on a rock and bounces off. Gendry lays on the ground bleeding. The Night King sees Rorigal continue to burn. Gendry turns on his back, spits blood and turns his head to the Night King. He looks Gendry in the eye. From everywhere whites come and rush to Gendry. They tear him apart.